The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're going to love it.
Okay, let's go.
All right, Dr. McCullough, I am going to try and not make the same mistake I made with a guy named Scott Horton. Do you know who Scott is, by the way?
Yeah, I know the name. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a big time geopolitical analyst, and I had him on, and I was so excited, and I had so many questions to ask him. I think I didn't ask him properly, but this time I've got a thorough preparation, and I want to let everybody know it is such an honor today to have Dr. Peter McCullough here. He is one of the people that, quite frankly, helped me get through the COVID situation. He really did. And he was somebody that I look to for not only medical advice, but common sense. So, all right. Welcome to the Deep Shallow Dive, and let's jump right into it. Let me ask you this to lay the foundation. How was it supposed to work? Like the mRNA vaccine, what was that supposed to do in terms of the spike protein?
You know, I think it's doing what it was supposed to do. What messenger RNA is it's a short strand of genetic code that codes for a protein, and the human body gets tricked into reading the code and producing the protein. So the technology has been around since the 1980s. The U.S. government and other governments have invested tens of billions of dollars in this. So this is kind of a government darling a biotech project. And it failed in terms of trying to replace deficient proteins in certain syndromes. It just didn't last very long. And then the idea is, well, it could be modified. And Pfizer and Moderna both strategically decided to begin to alter it and make the messenger RNA purely synthetic. And so there are base pairs. And one of the nucleotides called uracil, they replaced with pseudouridine. It's a synthetic nucleoside analog. And they tried replacing, quarter of them and then half of them. And it was lasting longer and longer. And then towards the very end of development for the COVID vaccines, they said, listen, let's go for it. Let's make it indestructible and replace all of the uracils with pseudouridine. So what came out and what people took in their arms is completely synthetic messenger RNA with no ability to get rid of it.
And was that supposed to stay localized? Was it supposed to stay in the arm region, or was it supposed to spread into the body? Because I feel like it absolutely spread into the body.
Yeah, what was said on the CDC website is that it stays in the arm, but it was loaded into lipid nanoparticles, which were known to go everywhere in the body. And then Pfizer did a biodistribution study, and it came out actually reproduced into an Australian paper by Peter Perry, who was the first author. And in fact, it went everywhere. It went into the heart, the brain, the reproductive organs, all the vital organs in the body. And we've never had a vaccine, that injection like this, where it went everywhere in the body, literally within a few hours.
Yeah. So, okay, gosh, that's crazy. I've been trying to understand, did the vaccine weaken people's immunity, and then did people have issues because of that? Or I listened to Eric Weinstein. I think it was Eric and not Brett. He said something interesting, and I wanted to get your opinion on that. He said it's not necessarily that the vaccine weakened the immunity. The vaccine caused the human body to almost attack the spike protein that the vaccine created. So it was as if the human body's own immune system kind of turned on itself to attack these spike proteins that kind of got created because of the vaccine. Exactly what you just said, all over the body. So if a spike protein from the vaccine attached around the heart, the myocarditis that happened wasn't because of the vaccine. It was the body's immune system reaction to that spike protein that got created. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a very good analysis. I didn't get a chance to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Peter McCullough. I'm in practice as an internist cardiologist, research epidemiologist. And as we sit here today, I'm the most published doctor in the world on the COVID-19 pandemic and the clinical aspects of it, the vaccine and vaccine safety. So I've studied this as much as or more than anybody
Yeah.
in the game. So what we know is that having the body take foreign messenger RNAs never happened before. Never. This is brand new. Anybody who took
Yeah.
Pfizer, Moderna, this is a brand new human experiment. It thermodynamically is unstable. The body shouldn't have to produce a foreign protein. It doesn't do that normally.
Yeah.
And secondly, that foreign protein, the spike protein itself, is directly damaging. And it was
Yeah.
designed in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. That was the part of the virus that was so lethal, the spike protein. That's the spine on the surface of the virus. So, no, it's directly damaging. It's not a benign protein
Yeah.
at all.
No, I,
And
I I believe it. I believe it. And a lot of the again, and by the way, I apologize. I should have let you introduce yourself. I figure everyone knows who you are by now, but maybe I'll cut that and I'll put that in the beginning. What has just terrified me is the excess mortality, the increase in, all of that. Like help us understand from the data better than anybody. What have
Mhm.
we seen since 2021?
Well, we always consider safety before efficacy. So let's just take safety. So because the vaccines, we have in the United States, 81% of Americans took one or more shots. 70% took 2 shots.
Mhm.
Ray, I'm in the 19%. I took no shots.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm with you in that
Okay.
19%.
So you and I can give an unbiased opinion.
Yeah.
I think people who take the shots, they can't be unbiased now.
No.
They hope the vaccine is not doing damage to their body. They wish, but they can't be psychologically and mentally neutral on this. The people who
Yeah.
took the vaccine get very nervous when we start to talk like this. They really do. Most people who took the shots do not want to talk like this. Like today, I testified in the South Carolina Senate by Zoom, and I can tell people were getting very uncomfortable. And I just
Yeah.
told them, listen, I'm a doctor. I looked at this. I did not think they were safe. I didn't want foreign genetic code in my body coding for a protein from a Chinese biosecurity lab. I did not want that in my body. It doesn't sound good. It's not good. And people started to turn really pale in the room,
Yeah.
So the vaccine, because the spike protein is directly damaging to the heart, it causes myocarditis. Now there is the body's own inflammatory attack. And sure, that adds on, but the spike protein is not benign. It's found in the brain. It weakens the blood vessels in the brain, causes stroke and hemorrhage. And every time a study is done where there's a biopsy and they look for the spike protein, they find it.
Yeah.
Every time they look for Pfizer and Moderna messenger RNA, they find it. It's in the human heart. And recently, in a patient of mine who suffered heart damage and who had blood clots from the
Yeah.
vaccine, he took 3 Pfizers. We used a research lab in Germany. We found circulating Pfizer vaccine in his bloodstream and spike protein 3.2 years after the shots.
Wow.
Can you
Wow.
imagine having that in your bloodstream? No wonder people are dropping dead, having cardiac arrest, having new blood clots, strokes, and the list goes on and on. Autoimmune problems, neurologic damage, paralysis, and actually new cancers. It looks like it's linked to cancers. You're having a foreign protein and foreign genetic code in your bloodstream for years after the shots.
Yeah. Was there a compounding effect based on how many boosters people got? Like the more you got the first 2 and then plus boosters, does that just naturally mean the chances of you having issues are greater?
By 2 mechanisms, yes. The first is just you're taking more
Yeah.
very bad stuff into your body. You're going to have more damage. But also, each vial was not the same. Some people got hardly any messenger RNA, and other
Yeah.
people got super loaded. So there's a website you can go to, howbadismybatch.com, and you can figure it out. But think about it. If you took 2 shots and they were from a low-risk batch, you're probably good. Probably not.
Yeah.
But if you kept taking them, sooner or later, the risk is going to be there. So, fortunately, 75% of people who took the shots from low-risk batches, it looks like nothing's happened to them. They're fine. But we got 25% of people who took the shots, and that's a big subset of the population we're worried
Yeah.
about them.
No, you know what? That's a great point because if you think about it, I think one of the arguments that people make when they say, oh, billions of people, potentially billions, I mean, definitely hundreds of millions took it. Why is everybody not having problems? It's exactly like what you said. Not all batches were the same. I think the protocol was to potentially shake them. They needed to be at a certain room temperature. And now you're relying on the first year pharmacist at a CVS or a Walgreens or, an independent pharmacy to have properly taken care of that vial. So I think you make a great point. What about the half-life? Like, does this thing have a half-life and a quarter life? Like, can people get this out of their system eventually?
We simply don't know. Now, we can
Mhm.
measure the antibodies against the spike protein, which is an indirect proxy of how much spike protein's been loaded in the body. Many papers published on this. The correlation between the antibody to the spike protein and the real spike protein in the blood is about 0.8, 0.9, so it's pretty solid. What we know there is, Ray, people like you and me, and we didn't take the shots. Hopefully, we're below 1,000 on this
Yeah.
spike test. But you take the shots and you're over 5,000. That's when we start seeing it in the bloodstream and over, 10, 15,000. I just finished with a lady on the phone. She's at about 8,000 and it attacked her eyes, damaged her nerves. She was paralyzed for a while. It's been absolutely horrible. At about 8,000, 25,000. Watch out. These people, spontaneous blood clots, cardiac arrest. So you
Yeah.
can get your blood checked, right? You should do this. Go to LabCorp.
Yeah.
Go on their website, LabCorp, Labs on Demand, click infectious diseases, COVID antibody test, pay $69 and go in and get your test. You don't even need a doctor's order for this.
Okay, that's great. That's great. I'll put those links in the description. That's the thing. I think people don't realize that, this vaccine came out of what seems like nowhere. Now you're saying the mRNA has been researched since the 80s and all that, but how much sense does it make that all of the sudden when COVID happens, you had 4 major pharmaceutical companies that according to the way they positioned it, got to market within 9 or 10 months. That doesn't make sense because vaccines in general, isn't there clinical trials they need to go through? Isn't it a 7 to 12-year period normally?
Yeah, well, it's certainly several years. And what we know is, the government has had its hand in this vaccine development. It wasn't just a private industry.
Yeah.
So DARPA, a research unit of the military, in 2012 launched a program. It's still on their website. It's called the ADEPT P3 program. They claimed with this program in 2012 that they would end pandemics in 60 days using messenger RNA vaccines. That's in
Wow.
2012.
It's in
So,
2012. Huh?
when people were said, oh, this just came out of nowhere. No, they were working on this for a long time. Moderna had a patent on the COVID-19 vaccine in 2016.
Wow.
So there
Okay.
was great anticipation that this virus was going to come out of the lab. We were going to have a vaccine. Everyone was getting ready. That's the reason why when Trump announced a national emergency in 2020, Stefan Bainzel from Moderna came out like a few days later and said, we have a vaccine ready. Well,
Yeah. That's
I
crazy.
mean, because they already filed the patent, they just had to check the current code of the Wuhan strain since it came out of the lab. And now all the U.S. Intelligence agencies agree it came out of the Wuhan lab. It's a man-made virus. It's part human virus, part bat virus. It was designed to invade the human body, to
Yeah.
kill the human body, cause blood clots. And now there are thousands of reports of people dying after the vaccine. I mean, it's just the worst possible thing. It does suppress immunity, to get back to your point. I think both COVID infection
Hmm.
and the vaccine suppress immunity
Okay.
because part of the spike protein has identical sequence to a glycoprotein that we see with HIV.
Oh, wow.
And it's one of the reasons why with the infection, we saw depressed white blood cell counts. I said, what's going on? It's usually it's a viral infection. The white count
Yeah.
should be up. In fact, it was
Yeah.
depressed. It looked like HIV on the white blood cell profile. Then this glycoprotein sequence was discovered. The interesting thing is there was a vaccine that was trialed in Australia, and it exposed that part of the spike protein to the immune system, and it turned everybody in the vaccine trial HIV positive.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
That
and immediately the company shut it down. But that shows you the spike protein does have homology to HIV. It is immunosuppressive. And then when you take the vaccine, I think it really knocks down the immune system. And in Australia, in their inquiry, they have a formal inquiry into COVID-19. There's a term, it's been accepted. It's called VAIDS, vaccine-associated immunodeficiency syndrome.
okay.
And
Okay.
we know this because people who take the shots, they have higher rates of reactivation of Epstein-Barr virus, higher rates of shingles.
Yeah.
All of this has been reported. And by the way, there's some public figures who've had this problem. So for instance, Dianne Feinstein had VAIDS and she had reactivation of varicella zoster, and it invaded her brain and killed her.
Yeah, I
That's
remember
Dianne
that.
Feinstein.
I remember that. And you're saying that potentially or plausibly was vaccine induced because of the
Oh, yeah.
COVID vaccine?
Yeah. Oh, for
Wow.
sure.
Okay.
She had a clear-cut vaccine syndrome. Another person who has it, he's younger, he's fighting it off, but is Justin Bieber.
Oh, that's
It's
right.
called
That's
it's
right.
called Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, and so his immune system's down. The varicella zoster virus takes off. It is basically, he hasn't been on stage in 2 years.
Wow.
So
That's right.
they
That's
showed
right.
him at the World Series, and he looked like he was kind of normal, but it really knocks you down. And somebody who I met before he took his shots was Jamie Foxx. And I told Jamie they're not safe, and he took the shots, and he has a cardiac arrest and a
Yeah.
stroke. He has a feeding tube in, a tracheostomy tube. He's really sick. He's in the hospital for a long time. I mean, these public figures keep taking the damage. Or how about Deion Sanders? So, he has turf toe and he played for the Cowboys. He has kind of some altered anatomy of the foot. He takes the shots. He brags about taking the shots. He gets blood clots down the legs due to the
Yeah.
shots. Won't admit that it's the shots. Makes a whole docuseries on it. Nearly has his leg amputated. Has multiple toes amputated. Recovers from that. And then what happens? He develops a turbo cancer and has to have his whole bladder removed. And there are
Yeah.
published papers about both the infection and the vaccine turning on bladder cancer, which is on the rise.
Yeah.
I've never had a man in his 50s have to get his bladder removed. And now we have a paper that McCullough Foundation has published with Neo7 Bioscience, John Cantazzaro. We have a woman who's 31. She's had a turbo cancer of her bladder. She had it removed, and guess what? We found the vaccine right in the cancer.
That's incredible. That's incredible. So is it finally accepted in the medical community now that the vaccine caused the turbo cancers, caused the sudden death, so many of these blood clots? Do you feel vindicated now, or are you still fighting the fight even among your peers?
Well, I'm clearly vindicated in the public.
Yeah.
So, I've been publishing on this. We're going on 6 years now. This is a long period of time. Thousands of peer-reviewed publications are out there. Vaccines are not safe. We've had U.S. Senate, U.S. House testimony, European Parliament, manuscripts published saying they're not safe. So it's clear they're not safe, and the vaccines have caused large numbers of deaths. A recent Rasmussen poll was done, and it found 56% of Americans, 56%, a valid sample, think the vaccines have caused large numbers of deaths. But you won't
And we're
have.
talking about all vaccines now, right? Or
No,
are
we're
you just
talking
talking
about
about
COVID
COVID?
shots,
Okay.
specifically COVID shots, right?
Okay.
So the public knows the COVID vaccines are causing large numbers of deaths. We haven't had a single major medical center come out and express any concerns. Mayo Clinic's been quiet. Harvard's been. They're not coming out and saying the shots are good.
Yeah.
They're just quiet.
Yeah, they're quiet.
Suspiciously quiet.
That's
And,
a great way to put it.
this
That's
has
a great
gone on and on and on. There are dozens of lawmakers who say get these shots off the market,
Yeah.
and yet they're still on every worldwide market. There's not been any investigation to inspect the vaccines, to review the data. No recognition to these poor people who've had blood clots and they've lost their lives. Today, I had a patient, wonderful lady, who did not take the shots, but she lost her younger brother to the shots. He literally took the second shot and he died within 24 hours. I mean, it's just clear.
I mean,
He died
how
of
do
the
you
shot.
not attribute that to that? Honestly, I personally, I've lost 3 very good friends who all were, in their early 50s, great shape, a runner, a football player, very
Yeah.
athletic. And, one of my good friends was on a treadmill, got off of the treadmill and just dropped dead. Like, that doesn't make sense. That's never happened before. And the
Uh-uh.
incidence of that, you were right. You nailed it at the beginning. People don't want to hear it and they don't want to talk about it, especially the ones that have taken it, because in their mind, they'd rather not hear anything potentially negative. It's crazy. So you feel more comfortable being totally out in the open about this stuff now
Mm.
because you went through a hard time during during those 4 years of Biden.
But I've always been out in the open. Yeah, I have one of the top social media accounts. If you search me on Google, I think I'm the most the doctor with the most hits on Google.
Yeah,
I still am one of the highest viewed person on Joe Rogan podcast, and
that's a great
I've been
episode.
on Daystar 5 times. Daystar is the largest Christian broadcasting network, and so with
Yeah.
each show with the reruns, the estimate is that's viewed by 1.8 billion people,
Wow.
because they're in
Wow.
140 countries. So, I've had a very big role to play. No one's taking these shots anymore. That's not thanks to the U.S. government. That's thanks to independent
Yeah,
media and my efforts and the
absolutely.
efforts of a pretty small group. The public knows now. They're not taking these shots. In Texas, we've been so influential that a mandate to take the COVID shot is thought to be so dangerous because you can die of the COVID shot. So the mandate itself is outlawed. You
Yeah.
can't force somebody to take a COVID shot in Texas because the shots are so dangerous. The logical thing, though, is just to pull them off the market because
Yeah.
no one's taking them. Yet countries are still buying the vaccines in large, orders, and they just pour them down the drain. It literally is money down the drain.
I believe it. I believe it. Let's talk a second about long COVID because this is
Mhm.
funny and ironically, I kind of felt this way, and I was doing some research before this, and I think you've said it. I don't know if they should call it long COVID or long vaccine. Like I almost feel like some of the people, and I have several close friends who are dealing with again long COVID. They were all vaccinated, but they're not willing to attribute what they're continuing to face to the vaccine. They said, "Oh, well, I got the virus as well." What are your thoughts there on long COVID being attributed to the vaccine?
There's a very good analysis by Daxner and colleagues from Germany, 48,000 Germans, and they carefully analyzed this. Turns out about 70% of long COVID is probably really due to the vaccine. Now, there was some long COVID in 2020, no
Mhm.
vaccine around then, so obviously it was due to the infection, but that's been a long time ago. People have recovered from that, and we really can't attribute it. The vaccine loads so much more spike protein into the body than the infection does,
Yeah,
and the infection's gotten milder and milder. We treat the infection. The infection leaves just the tip of the spike protein. The vaccine leaves the whole spike protein in the body, so it's a
wow.
much bigger load. And don't forget the vaccines, Pfizer, Moderna, they keep cranking out more spike protein. They don't
Yeah,
stop after a day or two. They're still working years after you take the shots. Now, with Janssen and AstraZeneca, that was an adenoviral vaccine. So that was a big blast of spike protein, but the genetics were out quickly.
okay.
Now, Janssen and AstraZeneca, they pulled their products off the market. So, you got to say, listen, they pulled it off after a couple of years. They didn't work. They were dangerous. You still have Novavax, which is a limited amount of spike protein, but our agencies refuse to mention that Novavax is on the market. And it's the safest of all the vaccines.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, you never hear of Novavax. You never
Never.
hear Novavax. in part of this long COVID conversation, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, those seemed at the beginning of COVID to really seem like they work, and I think you advocated for it. I listened
Mhm,
a lot to Dr. Pierre Corey. I
mhm.
listened to who are the other guys? Man, there was a handful of you guys that
Just
I
a few.
wish. Yeah, just a few, unfortunately, but you're all excellent, and you deserve like congressional medals of honor for what you did. You really do. But ivermectin, that seems like such a great solution for, quite
Mhm.
frankly, so many things. But could that help folks that are still having long COVID issues?
Yeah, well, just quickly, in the first year of the pandemic, our workhorse was hydroxychloroquine,
Mm,
which had already been shown to work against SARS-CoV-1. It was a natural to try. It was very safe. We use it in rheumatoid arthritis and malaria. So hydroxy was about 25% effective. So it helped
okay.
some people, took the edge off it. When my dad got it in 2020, he got hydroxychloroquine. Believe me, we weren't going to let him go untreated. But the real superstar was ivermectin. That came in the second year of the pandemic, and a large trial called the ICON study in Florida, published in Chest, it reduced mortality by 50% in the hospital.
Wow.
Everybody should have gotten ivermectin. Everybody. It's very safe. It's safer than taking acetaminophen or Tylenol. Now, what we have with long COVID is that some people have what's called a SARS-CoV-2 reservoir,
Uh-huh.
meaning the virus is still alive in their body and just slowly replicating. That's been shown now in multiple studies. It was shown in an autopsy study by Chertow and colleagues. It's pretty scary. You get COVID and a year later, it's still in your body. So,
Yeah.
if I see a patient and they have headaches, any type of head symptoms, headache, persistent pulmonary findings, a skin rash, or
Uh-huh.
night sweats, sweaty at night, that's a sign the infection is still brewing. And there, ivermectin works. It's my practice. I put them on full dose ivermectin. Someone your size would probably take about 36 milligrams. And Ray, we would do this for 90 days straight to try to
Uh-huh.
knock out the infection. Now, if you don't have those features, it's my impression ivermectin doesn't do much. So
Okay.
it has to do on the clinical suspicion. I think for vaccines, I don't think ivermectin does much, but most people who took the vaccines, because they don't work, they get COVID anyway.
Got it.
So
Got it. That's crazy. What about fertility or infertility for women? Like, has that skyrocketed, right?
yeah, it's a disaster. There's been some animal studies showing the COVID vaccine wipes out about 60% of the eggs. You don't get them back. It's really sad for the women who took it. About 70% of women who take the shots get disrupted menstrual periods for a period of time, and that's a big impact on fertility since it's a really delicately timed cycle. On the men, two studies show it knocks down sperm count and motility for about 6 months. Both the vaccine and the spike protein are found in ejaculate. So, a lot of women don't want to have sex with men who've taken the
Yeah,
shots. And so that alone will reduce fertility, right? So people don't get together.
that's a good point.
And then now we have the breaking data by Vibeke Manici from the Czech Republic, and this is astonishing. She looked at 2020 and then 2021, and towards the end of 2021, after everybody took the vaccine, fertility plummets, and the
Wow.
number of newborn babies just falls off dramatically. And now, sadly, today, young couples who took the shots, they're having trouble having kids.
Wow, that is just insane. It is insane, the ramifications. And you know what? We're probably at the beginning of it, right? We're not at the tail end of the ramifications. They're probably going to go on for another decade.
I'm still seeing new vaccine problems in my clinic. When I testified in the U.S. House of Representatives about a year and a half ago, one of the panel members, one of the congressmen asked me, Dr. McCullough, when is this over with? And I said, I forecast about 5 to 15 years.
Wow.
We're only 5 years into this vaccine disaster. I think we could have 15 years of worry. Every time there's a new cancer or a
Yeah.
cardiac arrest or a blood clot, the first thing we should think of is, did they take the vaccine?
Yeah, yeah. Well, was the spike protein creation from the vaccine what's causing all the blood clots? Like, what's the mechanism that's triggered so much clotting?
Yeah, the spike protein is physically in the blood clots. It's
Okay,
loaded, and the
okay.
spike protein folds and becomes what's called amyloidogenic, so it becomes rubbery. And so
Mm,
these are some of the largest and most rubbery blood clots we've ever seen. You know, the morticians are pulling them out, the doctors
yeah.
in the interventional radiology and cardiology suites are pulling them out. And I've had patients in my clinic walk in and have a blood clot from the ankle all the way up to the navel. I've never seen that before in my practice. And by the way, that happens after the infection and after the vaccine. So I've had multiple massive blood clots in people who've just had the infection.
Wow. Oh, just had the infection.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I think there was a documentary from these morticians like that were showing the blood clots. They were pulling them out. The what do you call it? The guys that do the autopsies. I forget what the heck those
Right.
people.
So Ray, we should mention some public figures with blood clots.
Great.
So, Congresswoman Bobart from
Okay.
Colorado,
Okay.
she had blood clots in the vessels down there. We had ESPN sports announcer Kirk Herbstreit. He has COVID, takes the shots, blood clots, pulmonary embolism. We had Justin Bieber's wife, Haley Bieber. She gets a blood clot, it goes to her brain, and they have to fish it out of her brain. They had weatherman Al Roker,
Oh, that's right.
multiple
Al
shots
Roker.
on
Yeah.
TV. He gets blood clots. I mean, Nelly Korba, the number 2 golfer in the world, she gets a blood clot in her arm. Multiple athletes, the defensive player of the year for the San Antonio Spurs, he gets a blood clot. I mean, there have been so many people have been hit
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
these blood
And
clots.
there's so many videos of guys playing soccer or football on the pitch, and they just fall down. They just fall down in terms of, obviously they must have had a cardiac issue or something. There's something called hypertrophic myopathy. I might be butchering that, but
Well,
I feel like that was a main issue that happened because of all the vaccinations, like
no,
the
no,
increase in inflammation.
No, to clarify, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy is a congenital condition where the heart is abnormally thick.
Okay.
That's about 1 in 500 people, but all the athletes are screened for that nowadays with ultrasound. So nobody gets
Okay.
to walk out, on the playing field with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy anymore. So it's not that. They had normal hearts to begin with. They took the shots, and what you saw, and in a paper by Polly Cretis and colleagues, and I'm the senior author, we showed that all these athletes who died in 2021, it was from the vaccine. They were
Mhm.
literally having heart inflammation, myocarditis, and a little bit of exercise, and on the playing field, that's when it happens. They
Yeah.
have a cardiac arrest, and that's what happened to Damar Hamlin, the Buffalo Bill.
That's right. Yeah, they tried to call that something different, but that was exactly a
Yeah,
cardiac issue.
they said because he tackled the guy hard. No, there's hard tackles all the time. I watch a
Yeah.
lot of football. I went on Tucker Carlson that night, and I told America, listen, we need to know if he took the vaccine. And he never came clean.
No,
Michael
he did not.
Strahan asked him, said, come on, did you take it? He goes, well, I don't want to say. So he did. Now, the good news is the vaccine heart damage is very treatable. So myself and cardiologist Michael Gukin, we wrote the Buffalo Bills doctors, and we wrote the Buffalo Evening News. We said, listen, we got McCullough protocol to use a combination of nutraceuticals. It's now wellness company has Ultimate Spike Detox. Hamlin should be on the Ultimate Spike Detox.
Yeah.
And then a prescription drug called colchicine. And so in my clinical practice, I've managed hundreds now of these, hundreds of people like this.
Wow.
It's Ultimate Spike Detox and colchicine. The heart heals, and we don't need a defibrillator. Now, sadly, some people got defibrillators. So if you remember the USC player, he had a vaccine cardiac arrest,
Yeah.
Iwichuchu. He got a defibrillator, and so did the
LeBron's son had a cardiac issue.
LeBron's son had a vaccine cardiac arrest, but he did not get a defibrillator, and they don't
Yeah.
need them now. If they get McCullough protocol, they should be fine. Of interest, pilot Snow, you might have heard about him. He was flying the American Airlines jet. He takes the shots. About 6 weeks later, he lands a plane at DFW Airport. He has a cardiac arrest.
Yeah.
After people got off the flight. And there's actually a story called The Miracle of Pilot Snow. This is pretty amazing. So everybody had left. All the doctors were gone. I wasn't on the flight, but all the doctors were gone. The poor stewardesses, and they were panicking, trying to get the defibrillator. He's out. Pilot Snow is a full-blown cardiac arrest. And one of the stewardesses, she gets on her phone and she calls 911. Now, DFW Airport has 2 circulating paramedics at all times. I know because, I know those guys, a couple of them are my patients. Anyhow, the miracle of Pilot Snow is when they called, one of the units happened to be at the gate next door. Can you imagine? Yeah, they're at C20 and the guys are at C21. So they literally come over, and by the time they get to Pilot Snow, it takes 6 shocks to get him back. That's a lot of shocking. But they get him back. He's neurologically fine, and he's in the he's in the hospital in Dallas. And he makes a video. He pulls up his hospital gown and he shows where he got fried from the defibrillator. He goes, "This is what the vaccine did to me." He goes, "I'll never fly again." So I had a chance to meet him and examine him later on. He got a defibrillator put in, and he's on McCullough protocol. And I asked him, I said, "Has your defibrillator ever gone off since you put it in?" He goes, "No."
Oh, thank God.
So I think a lot of people who got defibrillators really don't need them if they get proper treatment. They have to get the spike protein out of the body, and that's what the ultimate spike detox does from the wellness company.
I gotcha. Okay, we've talked turbo cancers, we've talked infertility, we've talked excess mortality. Overall with vaccines, what is the deal? Obviously it's a financial thing. Like, the one that always blows my mind is giving a perfectly newborn baby whose mom did not test for hepatitis B. Why does the 5-minute-old child mandated a shot of hepatitis B? What are your thoughts on all that?
It's completely unnecessary. And what the COVID-19 vaccine debacle did is it opened our eyes to what was going on with vaccines. I wasn't paying attention. My kids are grown up. I don't think about this. But we're now up to, I think if you count the newer products, we're up to over 90 doses of vaccines before age 18. The WHO wants to see that number at 500, believe it or not, by 2030. Paul Offit, vaccine promoter on CNN, he's from University of Pennsylvania. He wants to see 1,000. I mean, these vaccine zealots, to them, there's no limit. And you can imagine, you give all these shots, sooner or later, there's going to be a side effect. You can't, there's no free lunch here. Because they all stimulate the immune system. And about 20 vaccines, by the way, have a side effect listed called encephalitis, or brain inflammation. Well, sure enough, in some kids, they get brain inflammation. And after a big battery of vaccines, they can end up with sudden infant death syndrome. They just stop breathing in the cradle. About 75% of all sudden infant deaths occur within a week of taking these shots. So in Florida now, they're gonna mandate all the sudden infant death cases to have the vaccine records reviewed. It's long overdue. And then the McCullough Foundation just came out with a really critical report. We've reviewed all the information, most comprehensive report today, over 300 citations, I think over 130 primary data studies. The answers are clear. Giving a big bundle of vaccines is a risk factor for the development of autism.
Yeah. It has to be. It absolutely has to be. There's such a direct correlation between the increased number of vaccines and the rise of autism, ADHD. I was born in 72, so the 80s, early 80s and 90s, none of this stuff existed. I don't remember any of this stuff.
It took off after 1986, after the companies were given liability protection. I grew up in the 60s. I don't remember any kids with ADHD or autism. And now we know that allergic illnesses like asthma, food allergies, allergic dermatitis, ADHD, autism, tics, and seizures, they've all been linked to the vaccines. Now, there are some other risk factors. So parents having children at an older age, premature baby before 37 weeks. Many times they get blasted with vaccines in the hospital. That could be it. women taking drugs during pregnancy. The big
Mhm.
ones are serious psychiatric or depression drugs or seizure drugs, not Tylenol. Taking a
Right.
dose of Tylenol for a headache
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
possibly cause autism 2 years later. That's a complete falsehood.
Yeah, I feel like that entire Tylenol charade was a way to put the attention somewhere else instead
Well,
of
it
where
it
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 truly
didn't
needs to
work.
be.
No,
Yeah,
nobody bought that.
yeah,
Immediately, the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology came out and he said, "Listen, there's no way Tylenol is perfectly safe during pregnancy." And in fact, the manufacturers of Tylenol, they're going to take the government to court.
yeah, yeah.
And I was listening to CNBC. Kendall is a company being acquired, and they had the guy on. He goes, "We're quite convinced on this one
Yeah,
that they're going to prevail." I mean, Kennedy and Trump and Macri and Oz and Bhattacharya, they just look like fools up there. They
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 do.
should have come clean and said, "Listen, they should have waited, honestly, for McCullough Foundation report or another
Yeah.
report that's very comprehensive and say, listen, this is what Dr. McCullough came up with." So what we know now is now this is out. There's been a report in JAMA. 60% of parents are not going to go through with these vaccines. 60%. Vesuvian and colleagues from in JAMA, they just said, listen, it's too much. And, these little babies, when the mother is hepatitis B negative, the babies don't need hepatitis B shots.
Right,
Now,
right.
maybe if they go be a doctor like me or a nurse later on, towards, age 20 or so, you can take a shot. It's probably fine then, but not on the first day of life. So there's been 12 studies in the McCullough Foundation report, and this has been published now in the European Commission preprint server. In our report, 12 studies show a healthy child born today is healthier if they take no shots whatsoever.
That makes total sense. It's kind of
Yeah.
like the Amish. I think the
Yeah.
Amish have no vaccinations and they have the lowest occurrence of every
Right.
single issue. What was I going to ask you? What about like the shingles shot? You hear a lot of older people, my mom's doctor's trying to get her thoughts there.
Well, it turns out if you had chickenpox as a child, you have a lower rate risk of shingles compared to taking the chickenpox vaccine. So
Yeah.
5 studies show if you took the chickenpox vaccine, now you're at increased risk for shingles. Makes sense. And so the shingles vaccine is not very effective. It may work for a few months or a few years and only partially effective. And then you don't have any protection. I personally took it
Yeah.
probably about 20 years ago, and I got to tell you, it had the most side effects. It was the roughest vaccine I ever took. It's 14 times the dose of the chickenpox vaccine, and it's
Wow.
completely unnecessary. I had chickenpox as a child. My doctor, talked me into it. I regret it. I don't advise anybody take it. It's easier to treat shingles, to tell you the truth. We treat it
Okay.
with Valtrex and prednisone. Just treat it on day one, and we can snuff it out in a few days. I don't think it's worth the shingles vaccine.
Okay. Okay. Great. Great. I already know the answer to this one, but I'm going to ask you the flu shot.
Well, the flu shot has gotten so bad now. People have always said they took the flu shot and they got flu.
Yeah.
There are randomized trials showing in children if you take the flu shot, you're more likely to actually get the common cold over and over again. That's what happened to me. I took 40 flu shots. I got to the point where I couldn't. I was getting a cold every month in
Yeah.
2021. I think it was all those flu shots. I haven't taken one now since 2021, and I'm finally healthy. So it knocks down the immune system. It barely does anything against flu. Its effectiveness is way, way less than 50%. And now a Cleveland Clinic study by Shrestha and colleagues show the more you take the flu shot, the more you get the flu. So it's
Yeah.
exactly what people thought. I think they should drop this flu shot. We've got 4 FDA-approved antivirals. We know how to treat flu. We don't
Yeah.
need to keep taking flu shots.
No, I totally agree. I haven't taken a flu shot in almost 15 years, and I'm so glad people are waking up a little bit. I think
Yeah,
people are waking up because of folks like yourself, because of the experience that people had with COVID and
yeah.
with the vaccines. Even if they're not willing to admit, they've had these side effects or had issues, I think people are finally starting to wake up. And again, you deserve so much credit in that. All right. Anything else? Any other advice you have for people in terms of just being healthier? What about your diet? Do you have a
Okay.
particular diet, exercise, other things? Let's talk that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Well, there's a great war between kind of vegetarian and keto carnivores, and I tend to fall down the middle. My brief dietary advice, which I follow, is, I eat high quality sources of protein in this
Okay.
order: fish, beans, nuts, egg whites, non-fat dairy, occasional chicken and beef. I don't eat pork anymore because it has the genetic vaccines in it. So I just get pork out of the diet. And then fresh fruits and vegetables are unlimited. I don't sweat it if I eat an apple or an orange. And I've never seen somebody come in my clinic too fat from eating, a grapefruit or something. It just doesn't
Yeah.
happen. Uh, Now I try to avoid sugars, sweets and treats.
Yeah.
Starches is the big one. I don't eat
Yeah.
any goods. No bread, no cookies, no crackers, no chips, no potatoes, no rice. If you don't do that, you'll have a flat belly. I bet you don't eat much yourself. You look pretty
I
thin.
don't. Actually, I eat exactly how you eat.
Yeah.
Pretty much even in that order. People don't realize how good beans are for you and
Be-
legumes and getting
Beans
fiber
are
from
great.
those sources.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was just a little hungry right before I got on, and my wife had gotten out some pistachios. I just had a few pistachios, took the
Yeah.
edge off my hunger. And the last thing I avoid is saturated fat. I mean, I'll have a little butter on corn on the cob, that's fine. But these keto carnivores, they're eating sticks of butter, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's really
Yeah.
gross. And so I tend to, I had on my show Dr. Joel Kahn. He wrote The Vegan Approach to Heart Disease. I tend to side with him. I think the data are about 98-2 in favor of a more vegetarian approach. And there's
Yeah.
probably 5 days a week I'm vegetarian. 2 days a week I'll eat some meat. But, I don't eat gobs and gobs of meat. I honestly, it kind of gagged me. I don't know. And I've had keto carnivores on my show, and every time they seem to get sweaty and nervous, and they start shouting at me and telling me I'm wrong. And it's like, gee whiz,
Yeah.
I said, so I think that's what I do on my dietary advice. I try to work out every day. Like today, I had a full workout in the morning. So I use a 36-inch leg roller. I roll out, I stretch.
Yeah.
I did curls. I did 2 sets of 20 curls, 2 sets of 20 push-ups on a bar. I did hand weights
I love it.
on an exercise ball. Then I go into sit-ups and core. I do side sit-ups, which are hard to do. And
Yeah.
then after I finished that, I went out and I ran. So I ran outside, beautiful day in Dallas, ran outside a few miles, came back, showered up, went to work, home now. So I'm on with you. That's a typical day. Now, the other thing, Ray, you may not agree with this. I don't drink any alcohol at all.
Okay. No, that's great. I'm pretty much the same these days. It's just been a natural progression off of alcohol. So yeah, I don't drink much these days either.
Yeah.
What about step count? Do you track your steps? Do you wear a Fitbit or an Apple Watch?
I don't. I'm just kind of naked. I don't wear
Okay.
any devices. I
All
don't have
right.
any
I got you covered. I've got an Apple Watch on
Okay,
and a
you got it.
Fitbit. So I've
Well,
got double.
I did one time back when they had the old technology step counts. I wore it,
Yeah.
and I'll never forget. I was in the hospital and clinic, and it was miserable. I got like 3,000 steps. It's a very sedentary job. And my wife at the time was taking care of our 2 little kids, and we lived in a big house. She got like 12,000 steps.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I finally got rid of that step count thing. I said, listen, I'm just going to have to go run.
Yeah.
And a good exercise to do, and I don't do it very often except when I'm in hotel rooms, but burpees. You know what a burpee
Burpees.
is?
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, I
Sure.
mean, burpees, I do 10 of them, and I'm like completely short of breath.
Those things will light you on fire. Yeah, the whole movement, you want that blood going up and down. Your lymphatic system needs
Yeah.
to move. It's got to get that blood going. All right, listen, I am going to let you go. I know you have some things coming up.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed the conversation, and more than anything, I think people need to start taking their health seriously, and they need to start paying attention and not just listening to what, especially what their government tells them when it comes to their health, but even some doctors, I think some doctors are so rigid in following the book. That's why I've gravitated towards guys like you and Pierre Corey and other guys. So I really appreciate it. Any parting words for everybody? Anything
Yeah,
you
well,
want people to?
just follow me everywhere.
Yeah.
I've got a New York Times best-selling book out on vaccines. So go to my website, petermcculloughmd.com. That'll take you everywhere. Support McCullough Foundation, not for profit, tax deductible, McCulloughFND.org. That supports us all, our efforts in Washington and in the media. Go to the wellness company, get your ultimate spike detox, twc.health/courage. Virtually everybody should be on it. You don't want to get burned with a late blood clot or some other problem. It's very healthy supplements anyway. They protect against heart disease. And other problems. And, make sure you check out my podcast, America Out Loud Talk Radio McCullough Report, every 2 p.m. Eastern on America Out Loud Talk News. So, Ray, thank you so much. I'm Dr. Peter McCullough. It's been great to be on the program.
All right. Thanks so much. All right, everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Call a spade, call your parents, and we'll talk to you soon.
This episode was brought to you by the new book, Deep Shallow Dive Into You, available now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in hardcover and paperback. Don't forget to sign up for our new mailing list on our website at deepshallowdive.com.